But let's talk about PulseX and single-side staking pools, because this is frankly one of the craziest things that has made me lose not all faith, but a tremendous amount of faith in the intelligence and intellectual honesty of a great proportion of this hex community. Because the fact that we had our very own founder, Richard Hart, come out and spread fear, uncertainty, and doubt over the very use case, the very value proposition of his own goddamn decks, and not only do so, but gaslight his own community into make-believing that he didn't set the design intention for single-side staking is insane, folks. No amount of copium, bootlicking, low IQ, logic devoid nonsense can obfuscate the fact that to anyone outside our community, Richard Hart tweeting that he never set the design expectations for single-side staking and then gaslighting people into make believing that he didn't set that expectation is insane. It's self-evidently absurd. And it's so absurd that the only way for people to psychologically digest this and coherently, coherently put this, straighten this out into one's own mind while being a bull, while being a bag holder, is to deny the very reality and to deny the very problematic nature of Richard Hart doing this. But not me. I'm not some unthinking sycophantic bootlicker. I will point out problems when it is warranted. And guys, unlike fucking everyone else in this community, I paid attention. I listened when Richard Hart said game theory and tokenomics matter. In fact, why don't we listen to a video, one of the many videos of Richard Hart pointing out this exact fact? And folks,
the only use case that has had any adoption whatsoever in cryptocurrency is speculation, store value. That's it, period. Hex, now, for speculation, what's the only thing you care about? Price up, okay? Unless you're an option seller and you care about volatility and stuff, but that's such a tiny percentage, I'm not gonna go into it. If you're a store value guy, what do you care about? Price up. Oh, okay. Well, what makes price go up? People buying more than they sell. Anything else? Nope. Hold on a second. Wait a second. You're telling me that the most important thing in crypto is the price goes up, and that the only way that the price goes up is if people buy more than they sell.
The most important thing in crypto is that price goes up. And what affects that is more people buying than selling. Removing single-side staking for PulseX removes a giant reason to buy PulseX and hold PulseX, and gives people a massive incentive to sell PulseX. We recently had a whale sell, what was it, 150, 140 billion some odd PulseX. And he did that right after Richard Hart tweeted out the fear, uncertainty, and doubt over single-side staking with PulseX. We've heard it from Richard Hart himself. All that matters is price go up. What affects price goes up is if more people buy than sell. Why would people buy and sell? What affects people's buying behavior? It's the tokenomics, it's the game theory, it's the narrative. And removing single-side staking from PulseX removes a massive narrative to buy it. Guys, this is so self-evident. Everyone in this community rightfully would have acknowledged this 2 years ago, but because now conveniently it's affecting their own bags, they've very, very conveniently forgotten all this, which is absurd. I haven't forgotten. This shit actually matters. Guys, like it's so absurd. And guys, look, I was in a Twitter space with KDP the other day, KDP from Power City. Shout out to KDP. I don't have a problem with her whatsoever. I simply extremely strongly disagree with her on her point of view with PulseX single-side staking. There seems to be some large component of this community who has brainwashed themselves into believing that single-side staking isn't a big deal for PulseX. One of the main things she said, which surprised me, this was kind of a new thing I've heard, single-side staking, is that single-side staking for PulseX never really mattered, and that single-side staking is ultimately like a super silly thing, because if a community wants to, if a token wants to market their token, why not just airdrop it? And I agree, they could just airdrop it, but having that feature set in place for PulseX, where people can have a feature that they can go to for the long term, that essentially allows the equivalent of them being able to airdrop their token to a large community, is single-side staking, and that is a massive, massive value proposition. And Richard Hart 100% set the design expectation of single-side staking pools. He's tweeted about it before. We had it during the testnet. We have the tab open for single-side staking right now live on mainnet. So it went from everyone make-believing that he didn't say this. Now that Richard got all this backlash, and people pointed out that he did actually say this, he backpedaled and said, okay, now I'll do it. But now the new narrative is that, oh, this never really mattered in the first place. Tokenomics and game theory, what is that? Again, the emperor has no clothes. Everyone is make-believing that they don't see it. I will point it out that the emperor has no clothes. Okay, if everyone wants to make believe and cope that these differences don't matter, and if they want to throw out the years of wisdom and insight that Richard Hart tweeted just because it's now financially convenient for them to do so, feel free to do that, folks. But if you appreciate nuance, if you appreciate being able to address what warrants criticism, then I highly encourage you to follow this channel, because I'm seemingly one of the very few, if not the only one, who is willing to point things out to the extent that I am. And Richard Hart extremely rightly criticized years ago different cryptocurrencies like Uniswap for being a duct tape on token with no real value proposition, no real use case, which is exactly what PulseX is without single-side staking. Again, everyone in this community understood this was a problem 2 years ago, but now they're trying to do backflips and cope, find some way to make something intellectually incoherent coherent, because it's the only way that they can find a way to cope with the absurdity of what Richard Hart is doing. So if you see here on the thumbnail, I have PulseX with a bunch of duct tape all around it. This is in reference to Richard Hart himself criticizing the Uniswap Uni token, which is the token of the Uniswap swap, the Uniswap DEX, he criticized it for having no real value proposition, no real use case. It's just a duct tape on useless token, and he was criticizing Uniswap for doing that. And everyone in this community understood that. But now that it applies to our coin, now that it applies to our bags, all of a sudden everyone forgot that very conveniently. Isn't that funny how when it applies to our bags, everyone has forgotten this? Oh, isn't that rather convenient? How everyone was making fun of Uniswap. Like, guys, something to understand. There's a difference between tokenomics and use case. What is the use case of Pulse Chain? It is the gas token of this network and has some great deflationary tokenomics. That's the difference. You see the difference? Use case, gas token. Tokenomics, deflationary for Pulse Chain. What is Hex? Hex is decentralized yield. That is its use case. What is its tokenomics? T-share system. Great T-share system paired with great use case leads to great game theory, great product market fit, and great price performance. Now, let's talk about PulseX. What is the tokenomics of PulseX? Buy and burn. Fantastic tokenomics. But what is the use case? What is the use? I'm asking you. You guys tell me, what is the use case? It was supposed to be a governance token. There's no governance on PulseX. So without single-side staking, there's no actual use case for PulseX. It's missing an essential piece of that two-piece system. Do you see how Hex has a great use case and tokenomics? You see how Pulse Chain has a great use case and tokenomics? You see how PulseX has great tokenomics, but no fucking use case without the single-side staking? That is a problem. Richard Hart understands and pointed out this problem with Uniswap, calling Uniswap a duct tape on token with no real use case because you can't do anything with it. That is essentially the exact position PulseX is in without single-side staking. This is so self-evident, and the fact that I'm the only fucker in this community pointing this out is insane. The fact that no one is screaming this from the rooftops, I don't know what y'all doing. I honestly think, well, I don't blame you, because now Richard Hart has backpedaled and has said that he's going to do single-side staking. But how long is it going to take? How well is it going to be implemented? Richard Hart has led on. And another thing too, KDP brought up that behind the scenes in private chats, Richard Hart was saying how he doesn't like single-side staking while publicly leaving this ambiguous. That is disgusting. I can't believe KDP brought that up as like a positive thing that Richard Hart was doing. The fact that he was behind the scenes. Imagine that, guys. In private group chats with these insiders, Richard Hart was talking about how he didn't like single-side staking, but he allowed all of us publicly to make believe that he was going to do single-side staking. How disgusting is that? And the fact that Katie brought that up as like some positive point is insane. And again, look, I like Katie. I like what Power City is doing. I think it's okay to have a disagreement with people, have a difference of opinion with people. I don't think it's the end of the world. With the people in this community are so sensitive. If she doesn't like moving forward, I don't know what to do, man. Like, I cannot just not point out the elephant in the room. I cannot just not point out hypocrisy. I pride myself in being intellectually consistent and not just ignoring realities when it's convenient. But the fact that like the new copium is that, oh, single-side staking was like never great in the first place, then why the fuck was Richard tweeting about it? Why the fuck is he just now bringing this up after weeks after mainnet, allowing us for years to make believe like he was going to actually implement this? And now she's saying that behind the scenes in insider group chats, he was talking about how he doesn't like single-side staking, but publicly he's not clarifying this? Fucking disgusting. And it's only because we're in the Richard Hart community that we're not pointing this out. Okay, if this fucking bullshit was being pulled by any other founder in any other community, everyone in this use case would be screaming from the fucking rooftops about what a problem this is. And the fact that no one is pointing this out disgusts me, and again is the reason why I feel like I'm the only one pointing out the goddamn elephant in the room. And look, guys, I want to be clear, because so many people, when I've been pointing this out on Twitter, have said like, oh, okay, why don't you just like get out and sell? No, guys, no. I am still a bull. There is still massive opportunity in this space. I do still believe in Richard Hart. I'm just not some sycophant who thinks Richard Hart is this godlike figure who's completely incapable of ever doing something wrong or ever doing something imperfect. No, I understand very well that Richard Hart is a human being, and sometimes he can do things inefficiently. Sometimes he can do things perhaps incorrectly. So, like, no human does anything correctly 100% of the time. Like, guys, the only thing I've done since for years is been a net buyer. I'm here to tell you guys that you can criticize what warrants criticism and still be a bull. You do not have to be some unthinking sycophant in order to be part of this community. No, you can point out what warrants criticism and still understand the massive opportunity that Richard Hart is creating for all of us. Still understand that, yeah, things are likely to do extremely well over time, but there are certain realities that warrant being pointed out, and I will point those things out. I want to be very clear. Richard Hart did not set expectation of profit from the Work Brothers. He made that abundantly clear, but he 100% set the design expectation for single-side staking. If Richard Hart said he was going to fork Ethereum and then delivered a BitConnect fork, you can't just get away with that by saying, oh, no profit from the Work of others, no expectations. No, that doesn't work, guys. He set certain design expectations. Just like, you know, if Richard Hart said he was going to fork Ethereum and delivered a BitConnect fork, we would all have a problem with that. Same thing with single-side staking. He set the design expectation for single-side staking, and for him to be flip-flopping on this now doesn't look good. So KG also goes on to say, critical thinking is one of the main things that attracted me to this community years ago, and 100%. And that's another thing, guys. You got to understand, for those of you who weren't around like 2 years ago, before this whole Pulse chain stuff started, before the sacrifice phases, this Hex community was better than anyone else pointing out the nuances of tokenomics and game theory. They were better than anyone else. This whole community was extremely good at pointing out the differences between a Dogecoin and a Hex, the differences between a Bitcoin and a Hex, and how these little nuances mattered. And now I see everyone trying to make believe that these little nuances between EX and PX don't matter. These little nuances with instead of token don't matter. These little nuances with PulseX single-side staking don't matter. When for years, all I heard from the Hex community is that these little nuances matter. These nuances were the difference between a 100x, a rug pull, and a 10,000x. For years, that's all they said. And now I see everyone make believing that these little differences and these little nuances don't matter, which is why I'm making this live stream, which is why I've been tweeting what I've been tweeted, and which is why I'm making this thumbnail, because everyone told me that these little nuances matter. And now that it's inconveniencing them, everyone's make believing that these nuances don't matter. Well, I'm here to tell you that they goddamn do. PulseX Maxi saying, honest question though, Brandon, if you look at the coins that have done single-side staking, they all haven't done well. I don't know what you're saying. PancakeSwap did hundreds of X's. It gets drained during a bear. No, single-side staking only really works during a bull. It doesn't matter. Even if you get 1% yield, that is a reason not to sell your PulseX. That 1% yield that you can sell in a shit token that you can use to buy Pulse Chain over the course of years, that is not trivial. That is the difference between paying off debts, buying a car, putting down money for a mortgage. These little nuances matter, and everyone in this community preach the extreme importance of these little nuances, and everyone's conveniently forgotten that, thrown out the window. I'm here to tell you guys these little nuances still do matter. I don't agree with you. PancakeSwap did hundreds of X's, and that single-side staking was the only goddamn reason to buy PancakeSwap. Okay, so this is like another point as to why Richard Hart might be thinking about removing single-side staking from PulseX, because the fact that there's kind of some overlap in use case where, you know, Hex's use case is decentralized yield, and it has some great tokenomics with the buy and burn, and essentially, you know, the use case for PulseX is single-side staking, and you know, perhaps that is some overlap because at the end of the day, it is decentralized yield, but there are some important differences. With PulseX, you'd be getting some yield and really some shit token memes. With Hex, you're getting yield in Hex, you know, a great token that's likely to perform very well long term. So there is that difference there. And even if we grant that single-side staking for PulseX hurts Hex, which I don't think it does, because if you remove single-side staking from PulseX, well, then there's less of a reason to buy, more of a reason to sell. It won't perform as good. And now all these people who are chanting, oh, Hart's Law, the liquidity bonding, what matters is liquidity bonding. Well, guess what, guys? Pulse Chain and Hex are all bonded to PulseX. And if PulseX performs poorly, then, oh, isn't because of Hart's Law, then won't that hurt Hex as well? Like, guys, it's so funny how no one's pointing out these truths when they're inconvenient. It's insane to me. So yeah, no, I would argue that, hey, if you remove a giant reason to buy and hold PulseX, that will hurt the performance of PulseX. And since everything is bonded to PulseX, that will also hurt Pulse Chain and PulseX, or Hex and Pulse Chain rather. So yeah, I'm not buying that argument. And so, and even if that were the case, why is this being sorted out now? Why is this being sorted out after 2 years of waiting for the sack phase? Why is this being sorted out now after 2 months of Pulse Chain mainnet? The fact that Richard Hart supposedly behind closed doors in private group chats was talking about removing PulseX single-side staking, but publicly allowing the ambiguity, publicly allowing his community to think that he would do this is disgusting. The fact that this is just being all sorted out now and wasn't sorted out before is is not good, folks, to say the least. And no one else is pointing this out. I don't understand. Like, am I the only one who's like intellectually coherent and honest and doesn't flip-flop? I guarantee you I'm not. I guarantee you there's a lot of people in the space who are seeing this, who agree with me, who don't want to make noise because they understand that if you deviate from the party line in the Hex community, you're cast out. You're not allowed to acknowledge reality. You can't point things out. You need to toe the exact party line, whatever the narrative of the day is, before when Hex was doing RH product, the narrative was, oh, game theory and tokenomics. Now that Pulse and PulseX are out, oh, the new narrative is, hey, oh, game theory tokenomics, that doesn't matter. Throw that out the window. Now the only thing that matters is the fact that there's no difference between anything because of Hart's law and liquidity bonding. Now everything is the same. That's the new narrative. And if you deviate from that narrative, then you're going to be cast out from the community. You're going to be blocked on Twitter. You're going to be blocked from the Pulse Chain Telegram group chat, which I was. I'm blocked from everything now because I'm pointing out the elephant in the room. You get punished in this community for pointing out the elephant in the room. And so that's probably why we're seeing a lot of people out there not make noise, but silently agree with me. And that's why I feel okay doing this, because I know a lot of y'all appreciate someone who isn't a sycophant, who is able to point out the elephant in the room. And I don't give a shit if these assholes block me, because I'm in this game to get rich. I'm not some Richard Hart dick suck. And pointing these things out matters, because I want my people to do well. There is a difference between incentive token and Pulse Chain. Pulse Chain is extremely likely to outperform incentive token. There is a difference between PHEX and EHEX. I think the superior feature set makes it likely that PHEX will outperform EHEX. There is differences in tokenomics and game theory between PulseX and Uniswap, and those differences matter. Okay, it's not just Hart's law that affects everything. It's but one of many important influential factors.